The Straw Hats finally arrive at a new location, kickstarting a new One Piece arc in what turns out to be a land made of Lego? Bizarre as it is, let's try to explain just where exactly it is that Nami finds herself in, as well as a quick overview over all the other events around the world happening with Blackbeard, Shanks, and everyone else as the world of One Piece begins to move towards its final war. On the cover, we follow Yamato to the outskirts of Bakura Town in Kuri to Okobore Town, or Leftovers Town, the place where Luffy first met Otsuru while trying to rescue Tama. The lady that got rescued serves Yamato some soba while explaining that the girls from the soba shop all disappeared. Evidently, someone has been kidnapping young ladies, but could also be behind the disappearance of the carpenter Minatomo. What remaining person in Wano could have done this? Could it be someone like Apu if he still hasn't left the country, or perhaps someone more local like, I don't know, Hold'em? Could it perhaps even be that we are overthinking this and it's actually Minatomo himself? Anyway, as the Straw Hats and the Giants head towards Elbaf, we get a summary of what we assumed likely was the case that happened. Oimon Kashi set sail from Wander 7 as seen in a cover story and headed to Little Garden after the info provided to them by the Straw Hats to come after their giant captains, just as they had originally tried to when leaving the country 52 years ago before they were tricked into protecting Enies Lobby. However, we find out that Dorian Broggy simply agreed to put the duel on hold, not end it. As the Straw Hats party, Sanji inquires one of the Giants about one of the drinks, which he explains is an alcoholic beverage called absan, which is the Japanese way to pronounce absinthe, a real-life Swiss beverage of green tint. Elbaf is generally inspired by Nordic countries and Viking culture, but it also seems to take some inspiration from Switzerland's alpine landscapes, which are often mixed in with the imagery of Nordic countries, so it checks out. The Giant explains that this drink is also known by the name of Midori no Yose, which translates to Green Fairy. This matches with the drink also being called the Green Fairy or La Fée Verte in its original French language. The reason for this is because, though it has been contested, the drink was said to cause hallucinations, which was described as being whisked away by a fairy of a green color similar to the drink's iconic tint. This is again a fact that is mentioned by the Giant, so while it's possible this could just be some tidbit of world building, there is also the possibility this is another of Oda's guns that he intends to use for narrative purposes later, which we'll get into in just a bit. As the party ensues, we can see the Giants are dancing to the tune of Nika, and Luffy, likely none the wiser, dances along with them with the same pose of Nika. Meanwhile, in a sweet moment, Bonnie comments to Kuma how they can finally see the sea's horizon together. This is because the two had promised that they would travel the world together at some point in the future, but in reality the two were never able to make a trip aside from Kuma taking Bonnie to Egghead, something that was likely done in big part through his powers, and even then Bonnie was stuck inside a box the whole time. So this is the first time that Kuma and Bonnie are finally having a proper trip together as father and daughter, with even the broken Kuma cracking a smile. Meanwhile, we are retold the events that happened a little over a month ago, where Bartolomeo attacked an island in the New World as seen in a cover story. The timelines up well with the events of after Dressrosa around the time of Whole Cake Island, which in world was just not that long over a month ago, where Bartolomeo attacked an island that was part of Shanks' protectorate. We even got a name for the island, which is called Gartel Island. Gartel refers to a belt used in Jewish culture. I wonder if it could be referencing something else, like maybe being a deformation of the word cartel or something like that. Bartolomeo had attacked the island to spread the good word of Luffy's senpai, but when told that the island was turf of the red-haired pirates, he simply set his flag ablaze, not afraid of an emperor. As Shanks mentioned when he was approaching Wano in chapter 1054, he needed to make an example of Bartolomeo so that other pirates think twice before invading his territory, which we see him doing in this chapter. We see several onlookers among the villagers, which if you look closely match the different villagers that we had seen back during Bartolomeo's cover story, including the large guy they beat up who is still bandaged. Among Bartolomeo's men, you can also spot some familiar faces, as beyond Gambia, his right-hand man, there's also some other members like the pink-haired guy that tried to remove gum on the deck on their way to Zou. Shanks then offers a trial for Bartolomeo, asking him to poison Luffy in a month's time. The one offering the drink is Hongo, the doctor of the red-haired pirates, and we've seen him handling medicine in the past, such as trying to provide a cure for Uta during Film Red, found in a similar vial, though without the skull and crossbones of course. Bartolomeo however drinks the vial, as just as you might remember during Dressrosa, it was the members of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet who decided to form the alliance against Luffy's own wishes, and so they retain their independence and responsibility even now. This turns out to all be a trick, at least for now, as while he lets them get away, Shanks still has Barto and his crew shot, with Usopp delivering a deadly round that sets the entire ship ablaze at an impressive distance, turning the going Luffy senpai into cinders. However, the statement that any deaths are unknown seems to very well imply that the Barto Club will survive, just simply having lost their ships similarly to the Hard Pirates. So perhaps Shanks shows some mercy by giving them some chance to survive and only destroying their ship. But at the same time, this is incredibly cruel from Shanks. This seemingly is going to show that Shanks isn't playing around anymore. He's serious to take the One Piece, and he might even be willing to stand against Luffy as his opponent, obviously from a point of respect, but perhaps to honor that promise, he doesn't intend to hold back or play friendly with Luffy anymore. As much as some have speculated about a possible friendly Davy back fight or something like that, it may very well be possible that Shanks will not be holding any punches anymore in the conflict for the One Piece. As we move to Hachinosu, where Blackbeard has returned from his battle with Law, he talks about the state of the world, mentioning that now that the poneglyphs aren't a secret only known by the underworld anymore, the conflict for the One Piece will only escalate, with the major players being the four emperors and the government. This is kinda what we mentioned a long time ago, that the setup of the final saga seems to be a big battle royale clash between the new four emperors, Luffy, Shanks, Blackbeard, and Crossguild, and the forces of the government, with the revolutionaries as a wild card. This was recently reflected in the double-page spread in Vegapunk's speech. On the other hand, Law and Kid basically dropped out of the race, not making it as emperors and eventually getting both crushed, though of course Law at least seemingly has survived and escaped. So with that, as it seems we might be diving straight into a new arc with the next chapter, let's do a quick checkup on exactly what the current status of all the major players in the story is right now before we head into Elbaf. For starters, of course, the Straw Hats are going with the Giants towards Elbaf, joined by Lilith as well as Kuma and Bonnie. From his grand fleet, aside from of course Barto, we don't really know much about his other fleet members, who are mostly roaming around the seas freely as pirates, so they'll likely come to play at a later point. Meanwhile, the Gorosei and Imu are of course gathered back at Marijois with their new member Garling, while York is at Egghead to produce more Mother Flames, though Punk Records itself has obviously absconded with the consciousness of the punks. Among the Marines, Sakazuki is likely located at his office desk as always, and Kizaru is still to return from Egghead, while the current movements of the other two admirals, Fujitora and Ryukugyu, are unknown, as they were last seen trying to hunt down the Shichibukai, but that was already over a month ago in the manga. As for the other emperors, as we see here, Blackbeard and all of his 10 Titanic captains are reuniting at Hachinosu, save for Lafitte, who we will focus on in a moment. This also includes Karibu being brought along, with his knowledge of Pluton and Poseidon, as well as Katarina Devon having the ability to copy Saturn, which will prove interesting now that the real Saturn is dead. Kobe and the other sword members have escaped to Marine Base GS, where they are recovering alongside Tashigi and a rescued Drake. Smoker is heading towards Tashigi's direction while carrying a certain mysterious crate. On the other hand, Garp has been jailed by Blackbeard to be used as a trump card. However, conversely, Moriel also managed to escape, as confirmed in this chapter, thanks to the assistance of his daughter Perona, being the one who broke out Kobe to begin with in exchange for freeing Moria and running away with him. As we saw earlier in this chapter, Shanks and his crew are at Gartel Island disposing of Bartolomeo, who are likely continuously on the move. Unless we saw them, Buggy, Crocodile, Mihawk, and all other members of Cross Guild are at Karaibari, still preparing to make a move. Among other important characters, Weevil was recently captured by Admiral Ryukugyu on Sphinx Island, with Bucky in the original Stussy begging Marco for help, claiming that Weevil's origin and connection with Whitebeard can be proven by Dr. Vegapunk, leading many to think there is some cloning shenanigans going on. On the other hand, Boa Hancock was last seen at Amazon Lily near present day, following the attack on the island around a month ago. However, given how many wanted to hunt her down, she said she was wondering where to go in order to keep her kingdom safe, implying she might move somewhere else. She claimed wanting to elope with Luffy, so perhaps she might try to track him down. And of course, the Flamingo is still sitting behind bars. As for the Supernovas, not counting Hawkins, Kid, and Killer seemingly dropping out, as well as Drake being revealed to be a Marine, we are left with Beige, who was last seen in his cover story happily with his family, and Apu, who was last seen in Wano and likely got off the island safely, even if we don't really know what he's up to now. And of course, finally, Uruj, the final supernova or the really has to explore in any way and will likely have some form of relevance in an upcoming arc. Some think that this could be Elbaf, some think it could be another, but we are likely to see him making a move soon. His last location was the Balon terminal, where he was recovering after being injured by Charlotte Cracker during his incursion of Toto Land, where he defeated Snack. There he met Kaido right before he jumped down from the Sky Island, though of course this was long ago, both in the story being a couple of months ago and in real life being almost a decade since we've seen Urouge in summer of 2015, so Oda is definitely building up that anticipation. As a side detour before we end the chapter though, we see Lafitte at what appears to be the headquarters of Umit Shipping. If you can recall, Umit was one of the emperors of the underworld who appeared during Big Mom's tea party. He is a shipping magnate responsible for major shipping deals across the world, both legit and illegal, for which he has come to be known by the name of the Deep Sea Current. We even saw him in a cameo during Kuma's flashback where his company was transporting materials to build Egghead. However, in this case the headquarters are being wrecked, which will make transportation of food and materials limited for a period of time. With the bundles of the Red Port being destroyed as well, this makes access to Marijois practically impossible, effectively creating the resource siege that the revolutionaries wanted. However, with the bundles inaccessible, literally anyone that doesn't have some kind of power won't even be able to access the Holy Land, not even Marines, as Lafitte points out. And in response to that, Teach says, make the preparations, with the word preparations highlighted in Japanese for emphasis. This seems to indicate that Teach is about to make a big move and execute a plan, and if it's connected to Marijois coupled with Devon taking Saturn's identity, how could this all pan out? Anyway, we cut back to our jolly old Straw Hats only to see that some of them have completely vanished, alongside the Thousand Sunny as well. We know that we are near Elbaf, as just like Robin and Frankie point out, the fishes in the surrounding waters are gigantic, a trait possessed not only by the people of Elbaf, but also many of its creatures. And we know that a couple of days have passed since the Egghead incident, placing us around April 10th or so of the current year. On the ship we see Brooke, Lilith, Bunny, Robin, Frankie, and Jinbe, with Bunny sticking to Jinbe like a worried kid, implying that it's Luffy through Chopper who vanished, who would be the original 6 members of the crew. Can you smell that? It's the smell of a new arc beginning, where we are thrust into a new unknown location with the Straw Hats separating once again, as is tradition. However, weirdly enough, Nami wakes up from her hangover to realize that she is inside a Lego castle. There's a lot to break down here. For starters, in the dark, Nami hears what seems to be Luffy's voice. We can't say for sure, but the language used matches a lot with Luffy's, and it could also be from one of the other crew members. At the very least, it has to be one of them due to the informality in which they are addressing Nami. Secondly is Nami's outfit, which appears to be like one of a warrior, though with the iconic Oda skimpiness. She is wearing a special necklace, and on her back you can spot a sword. This barbarian outfit would seem to indicate that this is likely Elbaf rather than a detour arc and has nothing to do with it. Most puzzling, however, is of course the Lego castle. The entire building is made of building bricks akin of those of Lego. While not all the pieces match, likely more than anything for copyright purposes, several of the pieces are identical to those of the Lego system, such as the grated windows, the tile plate shield, and the bar elements, among others I could list. This isn't even the first time Oda has drawn Lego, as he did feature the Straw Hats playing with it during a calendar spread, and Oda himself is a big fan of Lego and has built many sets across his life, as is yours truly as well. This brings into question, however, just where exactly this is, but I feel there are 2 potentially easy answers to this conundrum. One answer is the fact that this could in fact be Elbaf. After all, Nami is wearing a Viking-looking outfit, and we've never seen the royal castle of Elbaf or much of its inland, so this could perhaps be one of its locations relating in some way way to fairy tales and fables of Jack and the Beanstalk or whatnot. It could even make more sense that this is, in fact, a toy house for giants built of building bricks made to be giant-sized. So in order to keep Nami comfortable due to her small size, they tried placing her inside what is essentially a doll house that would fit her size. Though these are giant-sized for us, they would indeed be Lego-sized for actual giants. This, however, brings some things into question. Why would Dory and Broggy and the other giants not know what is happening if this is a common occurrence in Elbaf? Why would the giants even think of kidnapping a ship that was clearly being escorted by the great Eric, the flagship of the warriors of Elbaf? And how did they even manage to do so? Some people speculate that the one kidnapping Nami could be Prince Loki, the royal prince and perhaps now even king of Elbaf, that once fell in love with Charlotte Lola, but his marriage into the Big Mom family fell through after Lola ran away, only to eventually marry Gotti of Bege's crew. So perhaps he's still trying to look for love and that's why he kidnapped Nami, but that is still kinda hard to see. And there's yet another question, which is, who dressed up Nami? After all, could giants really be able to change the clothes of someone that small in size? And why even bother to change her clothes at all? There is a second answer, and while it's a lot more boring, it makes way more sense. Perhaps Nami is hallucinating. As we were told earlier in the chapter, Absinthe, known as the Green Fairy, is known for causing hallucinations, and so in fact, Nami could be here hallucinating completely. It would explain pretty much everything, the different clothing just magically changing without her changing into it, as well as the surreal Lego landscape, not to mention her hearing the Straw Hats calling out to her, potentially because they might be doing so, but can't see them due to the hallucinations. She does in fact mention having perhaps drunk too much, so it would make sense this is all part of her hallucinating after drinking too much absinthe. However, what will this lead into, and what is it that really happened to the shape of the Straw Hats if so? After all, they were really kidnapped, they did disappear, so is this perhaps Oda just messing with us and all of this is in fact real? Regardless of what happened, it is evident that we are heading straight into a new arc, with little room to breathe, so let's just go along with this roller coaster as we dive into a new arc of One Piece, what may be one of our very last opportunities to enjoy such a moment.